Close your eyes gently now and let yourself settle into a comfortable position. Take a slow, deep breath and another, allowing your body to sink deeper into relaxation with each gentle exhale. Tonight, we're going to journey together through the mists of ancient time, back to a world that existed over 2,500 years ago, where the Mediterranean sun cast long shadows across the rugged landscape of the Peloponnese. Imagine yourself standing on a hill overlooking the valley of Laconia, where the ancient city of Sparta once dominated the Greek world. The olive groves stretch endlessly before you, their silver-green leaves catching the last rays of the setting sun. In the distance, you can hear the gentle murmur of the Eurotas River as it winds its way through the valley floor. This is the land of the Spartans, a place that has captured imaginations for millennia. But tonight, we're going to explore a story that is rarely told in its full complexity. When we think of ancient Sparta, our minds often drift to images of bronze-clad warriors, their red cloaks billowing in the wind as they march in perfect formation. We remember the 300 who stood at Thermopylae, or the legendary training of Spartan boys in the Agog. But there is another story here, one that unfolds in the shadows of these famous tales. The story of Spartan women, whose lives were far more complicated, far more challenging, and far more brutal than the romanticized versions we often hear. Let your breathing slow now as we prepare to walk together through the daily life of these remarkable yet often suffering women. Feel the warmth of the ancient sun on your face as we step back in time, leaving behind our modern world to explore theirs. The air here is different. It carries the scent of wild thyme and rosemary, mixed with the distant smoke of cooking fires and the ever-present dust of the training grounds. Our journey begins in the early morning mist, when the world was younger and the gods seemed closer to earth. Take another deep breath and let yourself sink deeper into this ancient landscape where the story of Spartan women is about to unfold. The first light of dawn creeps slowly across the mountains surrounding Sparta, painting the sky in soft shades of rose and gold. In a modest stone house near the center of the city, a young woman named Alexia stirs from her sleep. She is 17 years old, with dark hair braided simply and skin bronzed by the Mediterranean sun. Today, like every day, will bring its own unique challenges and hardships. Alexia rises from her narrow bed, her feet touching the cool stone floor. The house is simple, almost austere by the standards of other Greek cities. There are no elaborate decorations, no expensive furnishings. This is the Spartan way, functionality over beauty, strength over comfort. She moves quietly through the morning routine, her movements efficient and purposeful, trained from childhood to waste nothing, not even motion. As she prepares for the day, let's gently explore what it truly meant to be born a woman in ancient Sparta. Unlike their sisters in Athens or Corinth, Spartan women were not confined to the home, hidden away from public life. This might sound liberating to modern ears, but the reality was far more complex and often far more demanding than we might imagine. From the moment of birth, a Spartan girl's life was shaped by the needs of the state. If she was fortunate enough to survive the initial inspection by the elders, for yes, even female infants were examined for signs of weakness or deformity that might make them unsuitable for their future role. She would be raised not as a cherished daughter, but as a future mother of warriors. Imagine young Alexia as a child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, standing in a line with other girls her age. The morning air is crisp, and she can see her breath as she waits for the day's physical training to begin. Unlike girls in other Greek cities, who might spend their days learning to weave or managing household tasks, Spartan girls were required to participate in rigorous physical exercise. They ran, they wrestled, they threw javelins and discus. Their young bodies were pushed to their limits day after day, year after year. The reasoning behind this training was coldly practical. Spartan society believed that strong women would produce strong children, particularly strong sons who could serve as warriors. But this training came at a cost that few consider when they speak of the freedom of Spartan women. Their childhoods were not filled with play or gentle learning, but with constant physical demands that would leave many exhausted and some permanently injured. As we watch young Alexia run through the olive groves, her small feet pounding against the rocky ground, we can see the determination in her eyes. But also something else. A kind of resignation, perhaps, or a premature hardening that comes from understanding too young that her value lies not in her own happiness or fulfillment, but in her ability to serve the state. The sun climbs higher now, warming the stone walls of the city. Alexia, now grown to womanhood, continues her morning routine with the same efficiency she learned as a child. She eats a simple breakfast of barley bread and olives, drinks water from a plain clay cup. There is no luxury here, no indulgence. Every aspect of Spartan life is designed to promote strength and endurance, and women are no exception to this rule. But let's pause for a moment and consider what this constant emphasis on physical strength and endurance meant for the inner lives of these women. In other Greek cities, women found ways to express themselves through art, music, or religious festivals. They formed close bonds with other women, sharing stories and songs, finding joy in small pleasures. Spartan women, however, were constantly reminded that their primary purpose was utilitarian. They were valued for their potential as mothers, not as individuals with their own dreams and desires. As Alexia prepares to leave her house, she wraps herself in a simple woolen cloak. The fabric is rough against her skin, practical rather than beautiful. She steps out into the street, where the morning activities of the city are beginning. The sounds of daily life surround her. The clatter of pottery, the distant shouts of men training, the low murmur of conversation from the marketplace. Walking through the streets of ancient Sparta, Alexia would have been acutely aware of her place in the rigid hierarchy of society. Unlike in Athens, where women of all classes were generally excluded from public life, Spartan society was more complex. But this complexity came with its own forms of oppression and limitation. Let's follow Alexia as she makes her way through the city, observing the world around her with eyes that have been trained since childhood to see everything through the lens of duty and service. The streets are not paved with marble like those of Athens, but with simple stone. The buildings are functional, built to last rather than to impress. This is a military society where beauty is seen as weakness and comfort as corruption. As we walk with Alexia, we begin to understand one of the most difficult aspects of life for a Spartan woman: the constant scrutiny. Every action, every word, every expression was watched and judged by the community. A woman who showed too much emotion might be seen as weak. One who expressed individual desires might be considered selfish. The pressure to conform to the ideal of Spartan womanhood was relentless and exhausting. Imagine the weight of this constant observation pressing down on Alexia's shoulders as she walks. She cannot simply enjoy the morning sun on her face or the beauty of the mountains in the distance. Every step must be purposeful, every gesture controlled. She has learned to hide her true feelings behind a mask of stoic determination, but the effort of maintaining this facade day after day, year after year, takes its toll. The marketplace comes into view now, a bustling area where the daily business of the city takes place. Here, Alexia might encounter other women, but their interactions are carefully governed by social expectations. They do not gather to gossip or share personal thoughts as women in other cities might. Instead, their conversations tend to focus on practical matters: the health of their children, the performance of their husbands in training, the needs of the state. As we observe these interactions, we begin to see another layer of the brutality that characterized life for Spartan women. They were often pitted against each other in competition for status and recognition. A woman whose son showed promise as a warrior might be praised and honored, while one whose child was deemed weak or unsuitable might find herself shunned by the community. This created an atmosphere of constant tension and anxiety, where motherhood became not a source of joy, but a test of worthiness. Let's imagine Alexia approaching a group of older women near the market stalls. Their faces are weathered by years of sun and hardship, their bodies still strong, but bearing the marks of countless pregnancies and endless physical demands. They nod to her respectfully, but their eyes are evaluating, measuring her against the standards of Spartan womanhood. Has she maintained her physical fitness? Is she showing proper respect for the customs of her people? Will she make a suitable wife and mother? These women remember their own youth, when they too faced the challenges that Alexia now confronts. They remember the pain of childbirth without proper medical care, the grief of losing children to disease or war, the exhaustion of maintaining their physical training even while pregnant. Yet they also remember the pride they felt when their sons succeeded in battle, the respect they earned through their sacrifices for the state. As the morning progresses, Alexia makes her way to the training grounds where the young men practice their military skills. This is one of the few places where unmarried women are allowed to interact with men, and the interactions are carefully choreographed to serve the state's interests. The young women are expected to encourage the men, to inspire them to greater feats of strength and courage, but they are also being observed themselves, evaluated as potential wives and mothers. The scene before us is both impressive and deeply troubling. Young men, their bodies honed by years of training, move through complex military maneuvers with precision and grace. The young women watch from a designated area, their own athletic training evident in their posture and movement. On the surface, it might appear that these women enjoy a freedom unknown to their sisters in other Greek cities. They are not hidden away in private quarters, not forbidden from seeing or speaking to men outside their families. But let's look deeper, beyond the surface appearance of freedom to the reality of constraint. These women are not here by choice, but by command. They are not free to pursue their own interests or form their own opinions about what they observe. They are expected to react in specific ways, to show admiration for displays of strength and courage, to remain silent about any doubts or concerns they might have. Alexia watches as the young men practice with their spears and shields, their movements synchronized and deadly. She has been trained to see beauty in this display of martial prowess, to feel pride in the strength of Spartan warriors. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she wonders about the young men she knew as children, who might have preferred to study music or poetry, who might have had gentle spirits ill-suited to the brutal demands of warfare. These thoughts, however, cannot be spoken aloud. To express doubt about the Spartan way of life would be seen as treachery, a betrayal of everything her people hold sacred. So Alexia, like all Spartan women, learns to bury these thoughts deep within herself, to present a facade of unwavering support for the system that governs her life. As the sun reaches its zenith, the training session comes to an end. The young men return to their barracks, their bodies glistening with sweat and their spirits high from the morning's exertions. The women begin to disperse, some returning to their homes, others moving on to their own physical training sessions. Alexia joins a group of women her age for their daily exercises, a continuation of the regimen that has shaped their lives since childhood. The training ground for the women is located in a grove of olive trees, providing some shade from the intense midday sun. Here, away from the eyes of the men, the women can push their bodies to the limit without concern for how they might appear to potential suitors. The exercises are demanding: running, jumping, wrestling, throwing. The women compete with each other, their competitive spirits honed by years of training. But even in this space, supposedly their own, the women are not truly free. Their training is supervised by older women who report back to the authorities about each participant's performance and attitude. A woman who shows signs of weakness or reluctance might find herself subject to punishment or social ostracism. The pressure to excel is constant and unforgiving. As we watch Alexia running through the olive grove, her feet pounding against the hard earth, we can see the determination in her face. She has been conditioned to find satisfaction in physical achievement, to measure her worth by her ability to endure hardship and pain. But there is also something sad in her expression, a sense of loss for the gentler aspects of life that have been sacrificed in the pursuit of strength. The afternoon training session is particularly grueling today. The women run until their lungs burn, wrestle until their muscles ache, throw javelins until their arms can barely lift the weapons. Some of the younger women struggle to keep up, their bodies not yet fully adapted to the demands being placed upon them. But there is no sympathy here, no allowance for individual differences or limitations. Those who cannot meet the standards are seen as failures, burdens on the community. Alexia excels in these exercises, her years of training evident in every movement. She has learned to push through pain, to ignore fatigue, to focus only on the task at hand. This ability serves her well in the physical demands of Spartan life, but it has also taught her to disconnect from her own body, to treat it as a tool rather than a part of herself worthy of care and attention. As the training session ends, the women gather to drink water and rest briefly before returning to their daily duties. Their conversations are limited and practical, focused on technique and performance rather than personal thoughts or feelings. They have been trained to see emotional expression as weakness, to value stoicism above all other virtues. But if we look closely, we can see signs of the inner lives that these women work so hard to conceal. A fleeting expression of sadness when one mentions a friend who died in childbirth. A moment of longing when someone speaks of a festival in a distant city. A flash of anger when discussing a particularly harsh punishment imposed on a young woman who failed to meet expectations. These emotions exist, but they must be carefully hidden, expressed only in the most private moments when no one is watching. The cost of this constant emotional suppression is enormous, leading to a kind of inner numbness that affects every aspect of these women's lives. As the day wears on, Alexia returns to her neighborhood, where she encounters other women going about their daily tasks. The streets are quieter now, the heat of the afternoon sun driving most people indoors or into the shade. She passes a group of older women sitting in the shadow of a building, their hands busy with spinning and weaving. Their conversation is low and serious, focused on the practical matters that occupy their days. These older women represent both the achievements and the tragedies of Spartan womanhood. They have survived the physical demands of their youth, raised children in a harsh and unforgiving environment, and earned respect through their sacrifices and endurance. But they have also paid a terrible price for these achievements. Their bodies bear the marks of years of hard living, their faces lined with the stress of constant worry and responsibility. As Alexia approaches, the older women look up with expressions that mix approval and assessment. They see in her a younger version of themselves, someone who has successfully navigated the challenges of Spartan girlhood and is now ready to take on the even greater challenges of marriage and motherhood. But they also remember their own youth, when the future seemed full of possibilities that were gradually narrowed by the demands of duty and service. One of the older women, perhaps recognizing something in Alexia's expression, speaks quietly about the importance of strength and endurance. Her words are meant to be encouraging, but they carry an undertone of sadness, as if she is trying to convince herself as much as her young listener. She speaks of the pride that comes from serving the state, the honor of raising warriors, the satisfaction of maintaining the traditions of their people. But even as she speaks these words, there is something in her eyes that suggests she knows the cost of these achievements. She has seen too many young women broken by the demands placed upon them, too many mothers grieving for sons lost in battle, too many friends worn down by the relentless pressure to be perfect. Yet she continues to speak the approved words, to maintain the facade that all is well in Spartan society. As the afternoon light begins to fade, Alexia continues her journey through the city. The streets are slowly coming back to life as people emerge from their midday rest. Children play in the dust, their games already mimicking the military exercises they will soon be required to perform. Their laughter echoes off the stone walls, a sound that seems almost out of place in this stern and disciplined society. Watching these children at play, Alexia is reminded of her own childhood, when the weight of expectations was lighter and the future seemed more distant. She remembers moments of joy and laughter, brief escapes from the constant demands of training and discipline. But she also remembers how quickly those moments were curtailed, how even as a child she was reminded that her life belonged not to herself, but to the state. The memories bring a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. She wonders what her life might have been like if she had been born in Athens or Corinth, where women lived different lives with different expectations. But such thoughts are dangerous, and she quickly pushes them aside. To question the Spartan way of life is to question everything she has been taught to believe about herself and her purpose. As she walks, Alexia passes a small shrine dedicated to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and protector of young women. She pauses to make a brief offering, a small piece of bread and a few drops of wine. The ritual is simple but meaningful, one of the few moments in her day when she can connect with something beyond the immediate demands of daily life. The shrine is old, worn smooth by countless hands and offerings. Other women have paused here before her, seeking comfort or guidance from the goddess. In this quiet moment, Alexia allows herself to feel the weight of her fears and uncertainties. She prays for strength, not just physical strength, but the inner strength to endure whatever challenges lie ahead. The goddess Artemis was particularly important to Spartan women, representing both the independence they were denied and the fierce protection they were expected to provide for their families. The irony is not lost on Alexia. She prays to a goddess of independence while living a life of complete subjugation to the state's demands. As evening approaches, Alexia makes her way home, her daily circuit through the city complete. The setting sun paints the buildings in warm shades of gold and amber, creating a beauty that stands in sharp contrast to the harsh realities of life within these walls. She passes other women returning to their homes, their faces showing the fatigue of another day spent meeting the endless demands of Spartan society. The evening meal is simple, as all meals in Sparta are simple. Barley bread, olives, a small amount of cheese, perhaps some fish if the day's catch was good. The portions are carefully measured, enough to maintain strength, but not so much as to promote softness or indulgence. Even in the most basic aspects of life, the Spartan way emphasizes discipline and self-denial. As she eats, Alexia reflects on the day's events. She has fulfilled her obligations, maintained her training, shown proper respect for the customs of her people. By the standards of Spartan society, it has been a successful day. But there is an emptiness in this success, a sense that something essential is missing from her life. The problem, of course, is that Spartan women are not encouraged to think about their own needs or desires. They are taught from childhood that individual fulfillment is selfish, that true happiness comes only from serving the greater good. This philosophy might be admirable in theory, but in practice it creates a society of women who are deeply disconnected from their own inner lives. As darkness falls, Alexia prepares for sleep. She lies on her narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the city settling into night. In the distance, she can hear the guards calling to each other as they patrol the walls. Closer by, she hears the murmur of conversation from neighboring houses, the cry of an infant, the bark of a dog. These sounds of ordinary life provide a strange comfort. They remind her that despite all the hardships and restrictions, life continues. People find ways to love and laugh, to create small moments of joy, even in the most difficult circumstances. It is a reminder that the human spirit, even when constrained and suppressed, finds ways to endure and occasionally even to flourish. But as she drifts towards sleep, Alexia cannot shake the feeling that she is living someone else's life, following a script written by others for purposes she doesn't fully understand. She wonders about the women in other cities, whether they feel this same sense of disconnection, this same longing for something more than mere survival. Let's pause here for a moment and consider what we've learned about the daily life of a Spartan woman. On the surface, it might seem that these women enjoyed freedoms denied to their sisters in other Greek cities. They were not confined to their homes. They received physical training. They could interact with men in public settings. But as we've seen, these apparent freedoms were actually forms of control, designed to serve the state's interests rather than the women's own needs and desires. The brutality of Spartan women's lives was not always physical, though physical hardship was certainly a constant presence. More often, it was psychological and emotional, the result of living in a society that valued them only for their utility, that suppressed their individual personalities and desires in favor of conformity and service. As we continue our exploration of Spartan women's lives, let's shift our focus to one of the most challenging aspects of their existence: marriage and motherhood. For it is in these most intimate aspects of life that the true cost of the Spartan system becomes most apparent. In the quiet darkness of her room, Alexia thinks about her future. At 17, she is approaching the age when she will be expected to marry and begin producing children for the state. The thought fills her with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She longs for companionship, for someone to share her life with, but she also knows that marriage in Sparta is not about love or personal fulfillment, but about producing the next generation of warriors. The process of selecting a husband is not romantic or personal. Young women have little say in the matter, their marriages arranged by families and community leaders based on practical considerations. The primary question is not whether the couple will be happy together, but whether they are likely to produce strong, healthy children who can serve the state. Imagine Alexia being presented to potential suitors, her physical fitness and breeding potential evaluated like those of a prize animal. The young men examine her strength, her health, her family lineage. They ask about her training, her endurance, her ability to bear hardship. There is no discussion of her thoughts, her feelings, her dreams for the future. These things are considered irrelevant to the transaction taking place. The dehumanizing nature of this process is one of the most brutal aspects of Spartan women's lives. They are reduced to their biological functions, valued only for their ability to produce and raise children. Their intelligence, creativity, and emotional needs are ignored or actively suppressed. They are expected to be grateful for the opportunity to serve, to find fulfillment in sacrifice rather than in personal achievement or happiness. When a match is made, the wedding ceremony itself reflects the priorities of Spartan society. There is no celebration of love or commitment, no expression of joy or hope for the future. Instead, the ceremony is designed to emphasize the couple's duty to the state, their obligation to produce strong children who will serve as warriors. The wedding night is perhaps the most telling example of how Spartan society views women. The bride's head is shaved, and she is dressed in men's clothing, lying alone in a dark room to await her husband. This strange ritual serves multiple purposes. It is meant to ease the transition for young men who have spent their lives in all-male environments. But it also symbolizes the erasure of the woman's individual identity. She becomes not a person in her own right, but a vessel for the state's purposes. Following the wedding, the couple does not live together as husband and wife in the manner of other Greek cities. Instead, the man continues to live in the military barracks, visiting his wife only occasionally and in secret. This arrangement is designed to maintain the solidarity of the military brotherhood, but it also means that women spend much of their married lives alone, raising children without the support and companionship of their husbands. The isolation of married life is one of the most difficult aspects of existence for Spartan women. They are expected to be strong and self-reliant, to manage their households and raise their children without complaint. But they are also human beings who need companionship, support, and emotional connection. The Spartan system denies them these basic human needs in favor of what it considers more important priorities. Let's imagine Alexia, now married, sitting alone in her house as night falls. Her husband has visited briefly, fulfilling his duty to the state, but he has returned to his barracks, leaving her to face the long hours until dawn by herself. She is pregnant with her first child, her body changing in ways that frighten and confuse her. She has questions and concerns, but there is no one to share them with, no one to provide comfort or reassurance. The loneliness is almost overwhelming. She thinks about her mother, who died when Alexia was still young, taken by disease during a difficult pregnancy. She thinks about her friends, who are facing similar challenges in their own isolated homes. She longs for someone to talk to, someone who understands what she is going through. But the structure of Spartan society makes such connections difficult to maintain. Pregnancy in ancient Sparta was a dangerous time, made more difficult by the lack of proper medical care and the expectation that women should maintain their physical training even while carrying children. The belief was that continued exercise would produce stronger babies, but it also increased the risk of miscarriage and other complications. Many women died in childbirth, leaving behind grieving families and unfinished lives. The pressure to produce healthy children was enormous. A woman who gave birth to a weak or deformed child faced social disgrace and personal devastation. The infant might be abandoned on the mountain slopes, left to die of exposure, and the mother would bear the shame of her failure for the rest of her life. Even if the child survived, the mother would always worry about its ability to meet the demanding standards of Spartan society. Alexia's pregnancy progresses slowly, each day bringing new challenges and concerns. She continues her physical training, pushing her changing body to its limits because that is what is expected of her. She eats carefully, avoiding anything that might be seen as indulgent or weak. She speaks little about her fears or hopes, maintaining the stoic facade that has been trained into her since childhood. The birth, when it comes, is a terrifying ordeal. There are no doctors in the modern sense, only older women who have learned through experience how to assist in childbirth. The pain is intense, the danger very real. Many women die during labor, and Alexia is acutely aware of this possibility as she struggles to bring new life into the world. But she survives, and her child, a son, is born healthy and strong. The relief is overwhelming, but it is quickly replaced by a new set of fears and responsibilities. The infant must be presented to the elders for inspection, and Alexia waits in agony to learn whether her child will be accepted or rejected by the community. The inspection is a cruel ritual that reveals the true nature of Spartan values. The elders examine the infant carefully, looking for any signs of weakness or deformity. They test its reflexes, observe its breathing, evaluate its overall health and vigor. The mother waits nearby, her heart pounding with terror, knowing that her child's life hangs in the balance. In this case, the child passes the inspection, but the trauma of the experience leaves lasting scars on Alexia's psyche. She has been forced to confront the reality that her child's life has value only insofar as it serves the state's purposes. The love she feels for her son is seen as secondary to his utility as a future warrior. As the child grows, Alexia faces new challenges. She is expected to be a perfect mother, raising her son according to Spartan principles while maintaining her own physical fitness and contributing to the community. The demands are exhausting, leaving little time for rest or personal fulfillment. She is constantly evaluated and judged, her performance as a mother seen as a reflection of her worth as a citizen. The relationship between mother and child in Spartan society is complex and often painful. Women are expected to love their children, but not too much. They must be willing to sacrifice their sons for the good of the state, to send them away to military training without complaint, to accept their deaths in battle with stoic dignity. The emotional toll of this expectation is enormous, creating a kind of perpetual grief that many women carry throughout their lives. As Alexia's son grows older, she begins to prepare mentally for the day when he will be taken from her to begin his military training. She knows that when that day comes, she will be expected to show no emotion, to bid him farewell with dignity and pride. But the thought of losing her child fills her with a despair that she cannot express, a grief that must be hidden away in the deepest recesses of her heart. The years pass, and Alexia bears more children, each birth bringing its own risks and challenges. Some of her children survive, others do not. Each loss is a private tragedy that she must bear alone, without the comfort of her husband or the support of her community. The expectation is that she will accept these losses as part of her duty, finding strength in the knowledge that her sacrifices serve the greater good. But the human heart cannot be so easily controlled. Despite all the training and conditioning, despite the constant pressure to conform to Spartan ideals, Alexia grieves for her lost children. She remembers each one, their brief lives and sudden deaths, and she carries their memory with her like a secret wound that never fully heals. The isolation of motherhood in Sparta is compounded by the competitive nature of the society. Women are constantly comparing their children to others, measuring their success by their offspring's performance in training and battle. A mother whose son excels is praised and honored, while one whose child fails is shamed and ostracized. This creates an atmosphere of constant anxiety and comparison, where the natural bonds of motherhood are twisted into instruments of social control. As Alexia ages, she begins to see other women around her breaking under the strain of these expectations. Some become bitter and cruel, taking out their frustrations on younger women or weaker members of the community. Others retreat into themselves, becoming hollow shells of their former selves. A few find ways to maintain their humanity, despite the system's attempts to strip it away, but they are rare and must be very careful to hide their true feelings. The physical demands of Spartan life also take their toll on women's bodies. Years of intense training, multiple pregnancies, and hard labor leave their mark. Many women suffer from chronic pain, joint problems, and other health issues that would be treatable in our modern world, but were simply accepted as part of life in ancient times. The expectation is that they will continue to function regardless of their physical condition, showing no signs of weakness or complaint. Mental health, of course, is not even recognized as a concept in ancient Sparta. Women who show signs of what we might now recognize as depression, anxiety, or other psychological disorders are simply seen as weak or problematic. There is no treatment, no understanding, no compassion for those who struggle with the emotional demands of their lives. They are expected to overcome their problems through sheer force of will, and those who cannot are often abandoned by their communities. The elderly years bring their own challenges for Spartan women. Those who survive the rigors of their youth and middle age often find themselves caring for grandchildren while dealing with their own declining health. They are expected to remain active and useful for as long as possible, contributing to the community even as their bodies fail them. There is no concept of retirement or rest, no acknowledgement that after a lifetime of service they might deserve some comfort or peace. Yet even in these difficult circumstances, we can find examples of resilience and strength. Some women find ways to support each other, creating networks of mutual aid that help them survive the hardships of their lives. Others discover small sources of joy and meaning, even within the constraints of their society. They may find satisfaction in their children's achievements, pride in their own endurance, or comfort in their religious practices. The religious life of Spartan women provides some insight into their inner world. They participate in festivals and rituals dedicated to various goddesses, particularly Artemis and Athena. These ceremonies offer rare opportunities for women to come together, to express themselves through song and dance, to connect with something larger than their daily struggles. The rituals are carefully controlled and supervised, but they still provide a glimpse of the spiritual and emotional lives that women maintain despite the system's attempts to suppress them. During these religious festivals, we can see hints of the women that these individuals might have been under different circumstances. They sing with voices that carry traces of long-suppressed emotion. They dance with movements that speak of dreams and desires that have been buried but not destroyed. These moments are brief and carefully contained, but they remind us that the human spirit, even when constrained and oppressed, finds ways to express itself. The music of these festivals is particularly poignant. The songs tell stories of ancient heroines, of goddesses who embodied strength and independence, of women who faced great challenges and overcame them. For the women singing these songs, they represent both an escape from their current reality and a reminder of possibilities that exist beyond their immediate experience. But even these religious observances are designed to serve the state's purposes. The songs and dances emphasize themes of sacrifice, duty, and service. The goddesses worshipped are those who embody the qualities that Spartan society values in its women: strength, courage, and unwavering loyalty to the community. There is little room for gentleness, creativity, or individual expression. As we observe these festivals, we can see the complex ways in which Spartan women both resist and submit to the constraints of their society. They find ways to inject personal meaning into prescribed rituals, to create moments of genuine connection within structured activities, to maintain their humanity even when the system tries to reduce them to their functional roles. The seasonal cycle of these festivals also provides structure and meaning to women's lives. The spring festivals celebrate fertility and new life, offering hope and renewal after the harsh winter months. Summer celebrations honor the goddesses of the hunt and war, emphasizing the martial values that dominate Spartan society. Autumn festivals focus on the harvest and the preparation for winter, themes that resonate with the constant cycle of preparation and endurance that characterizes women's lives. Winter festivals are perhaps the most moving, as they acknowledge the reality of death and loss that is such a constant presence in Spartan life. Women come together to mourn the dead, to honor the memories of those who have been lost, to find comfort in shared grief. These ceremonies provide one of the few socially acceptable outlets for the emotions that women must otherwise suppress. During these winter rituals, we can see the full weight of what Spartan women endure. The faces of the participants reveal the accumulated grief of years, the quiet desperation of lives spent in service to ideals that offer little comfort in return. Yet even in these moments of permitted sorrow, there is a dignity and strength that speaks to the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. As we continue to follow Alexia through the years of her life, we see how she learns to navigate the complex emotional landscape of Spartan womanhood. She develops strategies for survival, ways of finding meaning and connection within the constraints of her society. She learns to read the subtle signs of distress in other women, to offer support when it can be safely given, to find solace in small acts of kindness and understanding. The friendships that women form in this environment are necessarily different from those in other societies. They cannot be based on shared interests or mutual enjoyment, as individual preferences are not encouraged. Instead, they are built on shared endurance, mutual support in times of crisis, and the quiet understanding that comes from facing similar challenges. These relationships are often unspoken, expressed through glances and gestures rather than words, but they provide a crucial lifeline for women struggling to maintain their humanity. Alexia forms such a friendship with another woman named Penthesilea, who lives nearby and has children of similar ages. They rarely speak directly about their feelings or fears, but they develop a system of subtle communication that allows them to support each other through difficult times. When one woman's child is injured during training, the other appears at her door with food and practical help. When someone faces criticism from community leaders, her friend finds ways to offer encouragement without drawing attention to herself. These friendships are precious but fragile. They must be carefully maintained within the bounds of acceptable behavior, never allowed to become too intimate or exclusive. Women who are seen as forming too close bonds might be suspected of plotting against the state or undermining the social order. The paranoia that characterizes Spartan society extends even to the most basic human connections, making genuine intimacy a dangerous luxury. The seasonal rhythms of life in ancient Sparta provide a backdrop for these relationships. During the busy seasons of planting and harvest, women work together in the fields, their shared labor creating opportunities for quiet conversation and mutual support. The work is hard, but it also provides a sense of purpose and accomplishment that is sometimes lacking in other aspects of their lives. Spring brings particular challenges for Spartan women, as this is when the young men traditionally leave for military campaigns. Mothers must bid farewell to their sons, wives to their husbands, knowing that many will not return. The expectation is that these farewells will be brief and stoic, with no display of emotion that might be seen as weakness. But the reality is that each goodbye carries the weight of potential permanent loss. Alexia stands with the other women as the men march out of the city, their bronze armor gleaming in the morning sun, their red cloaks bright against the pale stone of the buildings. She watches her son, now grown to manhood, take his place in the formation. He is strong and well-trained, a product of the Spartan system that has shaped his entire life, but he is also her child, and the thought of losing him fills her with terror that she cannot express. The women maintain their composure until the last soldier has disappeared from view, then slowly disperse to their homes. There is no gathering to share grief or offer comfort, no ritual to acknowledge the fear and sadness that each woman carries. They are expected to return to their daily routines as if nothing has changed, to maintain the fiction that sending their loved ones to possible death is a source of pride rather than anguish. In the quiet of her home, Alexia allows herself a few moments of private grief. She remembers her son as a child, his laughter and curiosity, his small hand in hers as they walked through the market. She thinks about the dreams she once had for him, dreams that have been shaped and limited by the demands of Spartan society. She wonders if he will return, and if he does, whether he will be the same person who left. The waiting period that follows the departure of the army is particularly difficult for Spartan women. They must continue their daily routines while living with constant uncertainty about the fate of their loved ones. News travels slowly, and when it comes, it is often incomplete or unreliable. Women gather in small groups to share rumors and speculation, but they must be careful not to appear too anxious or emotional. The physical demands of life continue unchanged during this time, Women still must maintain their training, still must work in the fields, still must care for their remaining children. But there is a tension in the air, a sense of waiting that affects everything they do. They jump at unexpected sounds, scrutinize every messenger who enters the city, search each other's faces for signs of news. When reports finally arrive, they are often brutal in their simplicity. Lists of the dead and wounded, with no details about how they died or what their final moments were like. Families learn of their losses in public announcements, with no privacy for their grief, no time to process the information before they must react appropriately. The expectation is that they will receive the news with dignity, expressing pride in their loved one's sacrifice rather than sorrow for their loss. Alexia's son survives this campaign, but she knows that there will be others. The cycle of departure, waiting, and return will repeat throughout his life, each time bringing new risks and new fears. She tries to prepare herself mentally for the possibility of loss, but the human heart cannot be so easily controlled. Each time he leaves, she dies a little inside, and each time he returns, she is reborn, only to face the same ordeal again. The women who do receive news of deaths face their own particular challenges. They are expected to accept their losses with grace, to speak of their pride in their loved one's sacrifice, to serve as examples of proper Spartan behavior for other women. But the reality of grief is far more complex and painful than these expectations acknowledge. The loss of a child or husband leaves a hole in a woman's life that can never be filled. Yet she must pretend that her suffering is somehow noble and worthwhile. These bereaved women often become the most fervent supporters of Spartan ideals, not because they truly believe in them, but because the alternative, acknowledging that their loved ones died for nothing, is too painful to contemplate. They cling to the mythology of heroic sacrifice because it provides the only available framework for making sense of their loss. But underneath the surface acceptance, many carry a deep and abiding anger that they can never safely express. The physical toll of grief is something that Spartan society does not acknowledge. Women who lose children or husbands often suffer from what we would now recognize as depression, anxiety, and other trauma-related conditions. They may lose weight, suffer from insomnia, or develop chronic health problems. But there is no recognition that these symptoms are connected to their emotional suffering, no treatment or support available to help them heal. Instead, women who show signs of struggling with grief are often criticized for their weakness, told that they should be proud of their sacrifice rather than sorry for themselves. This additional burden of shame and judgment compounds their suffering, creating a cycle of pain that can last for years. Some women never recover from their losses, spending the rest of their lives as shadows of their former selves. The children who grow up in this environment are affected in ways that extend far beyond their formal training. They learn from an early age that love is conditional, that their value depends on their usefulness to the state, that individual desires and needs are selfish and wrong. These lessons shape their personalities and relationships throughout their lives, creating a society of people who struggle to form genuine emotional connections. Alexia watches her surviving children grow up in this environment, seeing how they learn to suppress their own emotions and desires. She wants to protect them from the harshness of Spartan life, but she also knows that showing them too much affection might actually harm them by making them appear weak or unsuitable for their future roles. The balance between love and preparation is agonizing, requiring constant vigilance and self-control. The education of children in Sparta is designed to break down individual identity and replace it with group loyalty. Children are taught to see themselves not as unique individuals with their own thoughts and feelings, but as interchangeable parts in the great machine of the state. This process begins in infancy and continues throughout their lives, creating adults who have difficulty understanding their own inner lives or forming authentic relationships. For women, this educational process is particularly damaging because it denies them the opportunity to develop the emotional and social skills that might help them cope with the challenges of their lives. They are not taught to understand their own feelings, to communicate effectively with others, or to find healthy ways of dealing with stress and trauma. Instead, they are expected to endure whatever hardships they face with stoic silence, a response that often leads to psychological breakdown. The aging process brings its own challenges for Spartan women. As they grow older, they begin to see the full scope of what they have sacrificed for their society. They look back on lives spent in service to ideals that have brought them little personal happiness or fulfillment. They see their children and grandchildren facing the same challenges they faced, caught in the same cycle of duty and sacrifice with no end in sight. Some older women find ways to rebel against these constraints, though they must be very careful not to be caught. They may share stories and songs that celebrate individual achievement rather than collective sacrifice. Or they may find ways to show affection and support for younger women that goes beyond what is officially approved. These small acts of resistance provide some comfort, but they also carry significant risks. The wisdom that comes with age allows some women to see through the mythology of Spartan society, to understand that many of the sacrifices they have made were unnecessary, and that the system they have served is designed to benefit a small group of leaders rather than the community as a whole. This realization can be both liberating and devastating, freeing them from some of the mental constraints that have governed their lives, but also forcing them to confront the magnitude of what they have lost. As Alexia enters her later years, she begins to question many of the beliefs that have guided her life. She looks at the other women around her, seeing the pain and exhaustion in their faces, the quiet desperation that they all carry. She wonders if there might be other ways of living, other values that could guide a society, other possibilities for human flourishing that have been ignored or suppressed. But these thoughts are dangerous, and she keeps them to herself. To express doubt about the Spartan way would be to risk everything she has worked for, to potentially endanger her remaining family members, to mark herself as a traitor to the community that has defined her entire existence. So she maintains her silence, carrying her questions and doubts as she has carried so many other burdens throughout her life. The final years of a Spartan woman's life are often marked by a kind of resigned acceptance. She has survived the challenges of youth and middle age, has raised her children and contributed to her community, has endured losses and hardships that would have destroyed someone with less training and determination. There is a certain pride in this survival, a recognition that she has proven herself capable of extraordinary endurance. But there is also a profound sadness in this acceptance, a recognition of all the possibilities that have been lost, all the dreams that have been sacrificed, all the moments of joy and fulfillment that have been denied in service to the state's demands. These women have paid an enormous price for the stability and strength of their society, and many of them die without ever fully understanding what they have given up. The death of a Spartan woman is marked by ceremonies that emphasize her contributions to the community rather than her individual worth. Her value is measured by the children she has raised, the hardships she has endured, the degree to which she has conformed to social expectations. There is little acknowledgement of her inner life, her personal struggles, her individual achievements or failures. Yet even in death, these women leave behind a legacy of strength and resilience that inspires those who come after them. They have shown that it is possible to endure almost unimaginable hardships, to find meaning and purpose even in the most constrained circumstances, to maintain dignity and grace even when treated as less than fully human. Their example speaks to the remarkable capacity of the human spirit to survive and even flourish under the most difficult conditions. As we reach the end of our journey through the life of Spartan women, represented by our fictional Alexia, we can begin to understand the full complexity of their experience. They were not the liberated and empowered women that some modern accounts suggest, nor were they simply victims of an oppressive system. They were human beings who found ways to navigate an incredibly difficult and demanding environment, who developed strategies for survival and resistance, who maintained their humanity even when their society tried to reduce them to their functional roles. The brutality of their lives was not always physical, though physical hardship was certainly a constant presence. More often, it was psychological and emotional, the result of living in a society that denied them the basic human rights of self-determination, emotional expression, and personal fulfillment. They were expected to find meaning and happiness in sacrifice, to derive satisfaction from serving purposes they had no role in defining, to accept losses and hardships as natural and necessary parts of life. Yet within these constraints, they found ways to create meaning and connection. They formed friendships that sustained them through difficult times. They found small sources of joy and beauty in their daily lives. They developed inner resources that helped them endure seemingly impossible challenges. They were mothers who loved their children deeply, despite being told that such love was weakness. Wives who longed for their husbands, despite being kept apart from them. Individuals who maintained their sense of self, despite constant pressure to conform. The lesson of their lives is not that oppression can be overcome through sheer force of will, but that the human spirit is remarkably resilient and adaptable. Even under the most difficult circumstances, people find ways to preserve their humanity, to maintain hope, to create beauty and meaning from the materials at hand. The Spartan women remind us that strength is not always about physical power or stoic endurance, but about the courage to keep loving and hoping even when love and hope seem futile. As we prepare to leave this ancient world and return to our own time, let us carry with us the memory of these remarkable women. Let us remember Alexia and all the others like her, who lived lives of quiet heroism in the face of overwhelming challenges. Let us honor their sacrifices while also learning from their struggles, understanding that true strength comes not from the suppression of human emotion and desire, but from the courage to acknowledge and embrace our full humanity. The night is growing deeper now, and the ancient world is fading back into the mists of time. The olive groves are silent, the training grounds empty, the streets of Sparta quiet under the stars, but the stories of these women remain, testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to find light even in the darkest circumstances. Close your eyes once more and feel yourself returning slowly to the present moment. You have traveled far tonight, through time and space, through the complex landscape of human experience. You have witnessed courage and suffering, strength and vulnerability, the terrible costs of systems that value utility over humanity. But you have also seen the remarkable resilience of the human spirit, the ways in which people find meaning and connection even in the most constrained circumstances. Rest now, knowing that you carry within yourself the same capacity for endurance and hope that sustained these ancient women. Their struggles may be distant in time, but their fundamental humanity connects them to us across the centuries. In honoring their memory, we honor the strength that lies within us all, the courage to face whatever challenges life may bring, and the wisdom to understand that true fulfillment comes not from perfect obedience to external demands, but from the courage to remain fully and authentically human. Let the gentle rhythm of your breathing carry you toward peaceful sleep, knowing that you have learned something valuable about the complexity of human experience, about the costs of systems that deny individual worth, and about the remarkable capacity of the human spirit to endure and even flourish in the most difficult circumstances. The women of ancient Sparta have shared their stories with you tonight, And in doing so, they have become part of your own journey toward understanding and wisdom. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with the quiet courage of those who came before us, who faced their challenges with dignity and grace, and who remind us that even in the darkest times, the human spirit finds ways to create light and meaning. The story of Spartan women is a reminder that history is not just about great battles and famous leaders, but about the countless individuals who lived and loved and suffered and hoped, whose daily struggles and small victories are the true foundation of human civilization. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself be carried by the gentle currents of time, knowing that you are part of an unbroken chain of human experience that stretches back through the centuries. The women of Sparta have passed their strength to you, and you carry it forward into the future, a living testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to find beauty and meaning even in the most challenging circumstances. Rest now and dream of olive groves and mountain valleys, of strength and endurance, of the quiet heroism that lies within us all. The night is peaceful. The ancient world is at rest, and you are safe in the knowledge that you have honored the memory of those who came before us by listening to their stories and understanding their struggles. Sleep well, and may you wake refreshed and strengthened by the wisdom of the ages.